University, and the topic is African Americans and the criminal justice system. And of course, Dr. Sanford, before we had our first commercial break, we promised that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about the criminal justice system and African American systems from any way you decide during this next 8 minutes. Let's do it from that perspective.
Okay, thank you very much again. When we think in terms of African Americans and the criminal justice system, I would like to try to define the problem. I think when we look at it historically from the past, from 244 years of enslavement, 81 years of Jim Crow laws, leading into the civil rights movement that we all may very well know, as you may very well know of the movie that's going on right now, Selma. We can see that the criminal justice system was always a part of the social structure, meaning the society in which we live in today. They were there in order to make peace, to have some order to the system in which we lived in. I think the question that I bring to the table today, when you're thinking in terms of African Americans and the criminal justice system, looking back at slavery, to what degree was that order to control people in an inequitable way, in a way that was unfair? And to what degree within that same system, as we have come forward, is there still unfairness? So you're talking about an institutionalized type of system that's supposed to be objective, that's supposed to bring fairness to everyone within the community in order to maintain a stable society. But the question becomes, to what degree would certain people within authority use it in an unobjective way or an unequitable way and try to treat others in a different way? So we see disparities sometimes within the criminal justice system, and I think that's one of the major problems that we look at, even if you think in terms of hopefully the young people are going out to see Selma. As we talked a few minutes ago, you actually were there and lived it yourself. Many others have as well. And so you saw how the criminal justice system at that time would do unjust things toward other citizens of the United States. So today, when we think in terms of some of the issues related to the criminal justice system, we see a lot of inequity that still exists, unfairness in a system that people are paid through tax money to be fair toward all, but we can sociologically see the unfairness that still exists. And I think that's one of the major problems that I would like to try to stick with and talk about today. So I want to talk about Trayvon Martin, the Eric Garner, the situation that happened in Cleveland.
Very good.
How you bring in systems that's supposed to be fair and humane, but incidentally, because of a pattern, treat others in indifferent and inhumane ways. So I think that's the problem that we have to see. Now, Leonard has a book entitled Critical Constructionism, and he tries to get us to see an issue and a concern when we see a reoccurring pattern. So when we look back over the number of years of our life, or let's just look at the last decade, we may have had many instances where minorities were mistreated and the public would see it, there would be a little outcry, and then it would pass over. I feel what has happened in this case, you had the Martin case, you had the Garner case, and dealing with technology today, there it was on tape. People could see it. People could see a human being lying down with his head pressed down and saying, I can't breathe. And people who his taxpayer and others' taxpayers' money paid for them to do that particular job saw them be inhumane toward another human being. And so you saw the outcry. So why do we have to get to that point before we can use some logic, some rational thought in how we might treat our criminal justice system? So the question might come, is there justice or is it just us, meaning certain groups of people that might be treated in indifferent ways? So I think it's very crucial.
Or just us.
Yes,
yeah,
meaning African Americans, or we can spread it to other minority groups.
But
yes.
you know, in other words, you're indicating that that group is singled out in a real sense more than in determining their justice compared to other folks' justice.
That's right. Yes, yes.
And
so, and indeed, that's what we are finding, because I'm trying to contextualize the point that it's supposed to be a fair system. If everyone is going the speed limit, then everyone should be treated the same way. If you don't go the speed limit, then you'll stop. But so now if you're in a situation where there's a young kid and with the Trayvon Martin issue, or if you have a gun and you have a police officers there, do you have to shoot someone like that? Or if you shot someone one time in the Brown case and he falls down, do you have to shoot him 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times and more? And then you find the same verdict that we would have found during the Emmett Till or during the Selma film and when incidents like that occurred. So anytime you find any ethnic group that's standing up for justice and righteousness, you find that in many instances that same system might do something against them. And so we have to really be aware of that. Going back to Henna, how do we see when a certain pattern exists that we can then see that it's a problem? And that's what I'm trying to suggest today, that within our criminal justice systems, as great as it does to keep order and to maintain order, it also has its defects in it, and we need to understand that those problems exist and see if we can solve them. Now, a larger issue I would like to say, because it's kind of intervening. I just witnessed and heard in the presence at Vanderbilt University the past ambassador Andrew Young, and he mentioned—
I'm sorry, that happened, Andrew? Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. No, he didn't pass. I was just happened to be in his presence when he spoke the other day.
Very good.
Yeah, he spoke when he brought up the issue. He brought up the issue about the Ferguson issue. And in there, he just didn't see it as being race-related, but he thought it was much more related to the circumstance in Ferguson. And he gave an example of his being mayor and changed the whole criminal justice system to be fairer, and he had better outcomes. So he was calling for that. But Higginbotham at Harvard University would say that race is still a fundamental part of social structure. And so while I see the poverty that's there, if you look at Ferguson, you see a 60% population of African Americans, but then when you look at the criminal justice system, you see just 1 or 2% of people on the force. And then one should be able to see that there's a disparity that's there with inequity and then try to do something about it. That's the pattern I think Henna would indicate to us that we should be able to see, that it's going